Doesn't sound like a very exciting thing to most people, but the art of level winding spools of cable or rope has been going on for centuries, and I talked to the biggest people in the nation in this business, and it was from Texas, and his typical Texas answer was, well, you know, sir, they call everybody sir, even me, and he said, you know, sir, we don't do it right, but we do it best. And they have a company that's multinational all over Sydney, Johannesburg, South Africa, and they're in the business of getting cables onto drums around this world, and the company's in its 4th generation of ownership.
Who might be using this? The telephone company, electric company?
Oh, yes, most of the utilities, the Navy, of course, aboard ships and so forth, the mining industry for lifting and pulling, the locks on all the canals, and all the big dams have winches that lift up and down the doors to control the height. So winches have been around since the wishing well. You know, the old wishing wells had a winch.
That's
right,
true.
That was a winch. But fortunately, the load would travel with the pull, so it didn't. The cable didn't have a tendency to gang up in any place. But wherever the load is on a normal winch is where the cable will gang up, and then when it crosses over, in the oil fields especially, when that cable crosses over, if you have a 1,000-foot cable and it crosses over in the middle, you now have 2 500-foot cables, whether you have any need for them or not. And,
wow.
And it's very expensive. One oil company quoted they lose $2 million a year on this. But the way this came about, if I may, through the telephone company. The telephone company had some trucks at a friend's place, and he asked me to look at them one Saturday morning. And I went out there, and I spent Saturday morning with the crew, and I looked at those trucks, and if it was electronic controls over hydraulic, over, of course, mechanical. And these machines even had little standby batteries in the system so that if the battery in a truck went dead, these little standby batteries kept this system programmed. That's how serious it was. And my friend said that it was probably somewhere between $20,000 and $40,000 in that wind system, and they never work. And in fact, 3 of the trucks were sitting there, they've been sitting there for months. He asked me to take a look at them on a Saturday, and I did. And I went there Saturday morning, the most awesome day in my life, incidentally. I went there on Saturday morning, and at noon I told the crew to go home. And they weren't my people. And they said, well, we've been paid for the whole day. And for some reason, something came that said, go home, this is wrong. There's something wrong. So I went away, and I never thought about level wind. That's the art, of course. I never thought about level wind for that whole day. Lots of other conversations. I sat down at dinner at 8 o'clock at night with a friend. Fortunately, this restaurant we went to had a big paper tablecloth. And he said to me, what'd you do today, George? And I said, I invented a level wind. And he said, oh, that sounds exciting, you know, me, a car racer, and a level one. He happened to be a car racer. So I took out my pencil, and I put it on that napkin. I had never drawn a line before that. Never drew a line. And on that napkin, it came. That is fact. It was the most awesome day of my life. And I don't even know what made me say what I said. I am still perplexed by the nerve that I had to say I'd invented something I'd never put a pencil to.
Take a look at it.
Okay, well, this is a very simple model of the device. If we can, there we go, here we have it. And it's just a very simple aluminum part with only one moving part. All of the cable naturally would normally want to gang up in the middle here. If you didn't have a level wind, it would all stay toward the center or wherever the load was. This is what I call my pogo stick. And this little stick is geometrically set up to just automatically wind this. And all it takes is it winds all by itself and absolutely perfectly. It takes no outside source at all. Nothing does the work except that little stick and just its geometry. And it'll wind whatever size cable. It doesn't care about the size of the cable. Tension means absolutely nothing because this little stick is a balance. It's just like this fulcrum point on a seesaw. And the seesaw will always work. It doesn't make any difference whether you put 200 guys like me on, one on each end, or 2 small children. As long as the balance is right, it will work. And that's how this device works. It is a seesaw. And the seesaw, it will be in perfect balance at all times. The people in the industry that I've shown to since I saw you last are in absolute awe. They're in awe over it like I was. The chief engineer of the largest winch company in the world, took it home with him. I showed it to him on a Wednesday. He said, George, I don't believe it. And I said, well, I'm going to be in town till Friday. This was up in Washington State. And he took it home with him 2 nights, Wednesday night and Thursday night. And Friday morning, he said, I see it, and I know it works. I can't explain it. and he was the chief engineer of the largest winch company in the world. Nature is very lazy because we're natural and we're the same way. The line will always take the shortest distance between the fleet point and the tangent point on a spool. So if it's in the middle, it'll just want to stay in the middle. But if it's far enough away, the rope doesn't want to climb over itself or the thread on the sewing machine.
Yes.
So it will move a reasonable distance. But beyond a reasonable distance, it requires a mechanical winder. And a mechanical winder today, these winders, like I told you, this one was worth about $40,000. There are people that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to wind one drum.
Let's see if we can bring up that picture of the huge drum that is being used now.
There it is.
Now that's grooved. Is that
Yes,
not
that's been grooved by a company in Texas, and they've got 4 generations of labor and technology in this. This is the highest state-of-the-art today. And that drum has been totally pre-grooved, so that the first layer will lay down properly. And after the first layer lays down properly, some fairly complex winding devices will lay the additional ones on properly.
Now, that entire procedure of wrapping cable on a spool that way is extremely costly.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The art has never been perfected. In fact, a company that's very interested in licensing our product, the largest winch company in the world, said that there'll never be a need for another pre-grooved spool once this device is perfected and is out in the marketplace, which made me feel pretty good. In fact, they're so excited about it. The idea is only about 90 days old, as you know, and today that winch company has an order from the Army, and they're designing in our winder in an Army tank recovery vehicle today. And they're showing our winder to the world at a big conference in Kansas City, the World Conference of Construction Vehicle Builders. And we've been at it only about 90 days.